Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cryptonized. Today, joining me is Gareth Soloway. We're going to talk about a bunch of different things. He seems like someone, and I've been following for some time, that knows his stuff. So I'm going to throw some new stuff at him and get him to think a little bit before he answers. But before we do that, Gareth, can you quickly introduce yourself before we jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Gareth Soloway, and I'm a 20-year trader. Started in the late 90s, early 2000s, so it's been a long road. I started young, but at the same time, I kind of learned the hard way. I didn't have any guidance really early on, so I had to learn it like most people out there, which is trial and error, which when you're dealing with money is always very, very tough. But I was determined, and I studied like crazy. I studied charts, I studied human psychology, and eventually it started making sense, and the charts started to make sense, and I was able to kind of grind up. So I started in 2007 in themoneystocks.com trading commodities and stocks with people, and then we branched into crypto in 2021 with verified investing crypto.com.
Okay, so 20-year trader. So what got you, a little bit more background, what got you into crypto? And I know you're not completely out of trading, but what moved you into crypto and when?
Yeah, so my first introduction on crypto was like 2012, 2013. And it was just really kind of getting familiarized with it. This is coming off of the Fed printing money starting in '09, which for me, I was always a guy that was very much common sense financially, right? It was pay off your debts. You can't run up crazy debts and expect to survive. And here I saw the government doing exactly that, just more debt, print more money, print more money. And finally, it got to a point where when I realized what Bitcoin was, it started to make a lot of sense. And so I started to dabble a little bit back then, but I'm mostly a swing trader, so I can't take credit for holding, crypto from then and just letting it run all the way up. I was in, I was out, I was back in, and I was out. But that was really my first introduction, and then I really started to trade more in 2019, 20, 21, with like Solana and some of these other coins out there as they became more and more popular.
Wow. So are you trading like just in a few cryptocurrencies or whatever you think is the hot thing of the day?
Yeah, so for the most part, it's I keep it with the top 20, 25 cryptos. And the reason I do that is because as a technical trader, I have to gauge the risk of any chart setup failing. And when you get to some of these coins that are 100 or hundreds on the list, there's not a lot of volume, and one individual can kind of reshape the chart by just dumping a huge bag or accumulating. And so I can't quantify that in terms of risk reward and in terms of analysis. So I like to stay with the ones where there's so much volume that there's not a lot of risk of one person screwing up the chart. And this allows me to kind of figure out the likely outcome of the chart.
Okay. And so I know you're a big chartist, but does the same charting principles apply to investing in crypto as they are in stocks? Do you look at the charts the same way or are they different?
Yeah, so that's the beautiful thing about it. What gets me excited every day is that it really is the same. And the reason it is the same is because how are charts created in stocks and commodities? You have buyers and sellers. And so it's basically millions of people deciding should we all buy, should we all sell, who's selling, who's buying. And it's a representation of human psychology, right? Greed and fear. That's what drives markets. And when you go over to crypto, it's the same thing. Now, maybe it's the same thing on steroids, but it's still the same thing, right? So a bull flag on Bitcoin, for instance, would be looked at as a bull flag on Apple, and you would generally take it the same way.
Okay. Were you able to see using charts how far Bitcoin would go down? I mean, would it go down to 14,000, 15,000 at one point from 60? Would a chart tell you that? Or is a chart more of a short-term psychology of the market?
So it depends on the time frame you're looking at. So when you're looking at intraday charts, it's very much what is going on right now for the next couple hours. When you look at the daily, the weekly, and the monthly charts, you start to get a bigger perspective of the bigger move coming. And so I still reckon back to, I was in Dubai at the blockchain summit in October of 2021. And I was the only one there that was saying Bitcoin was topping out and going down. And you should have seen me. I was on stage and I was giving a presentation to a few hundred people. And I said, guys, I think it's going down to 20,000. That was the previous major cycle top. And so
We got to find that clip. We got to find
Yes,
that clip.
it's there. It is there, and everyone, yeah, it was with Kitco News when I was there, and there's a bunch of others ones. But the bottom line is the bigger chart told me that was the likely scenario. And again, just like everything, nothing's 100%. I could have been wrong, but it's probabilities, right? So for me, when I looked at the things that I look at, it was telling me there was an 80% chance that there was going to be a big bear market, and ultimately, it did come to fruition.
Yeah, it did in a big way. And how did you see that build when it was at 60,000? Is there a bunch of are there a lot more sellers that you're looking at than buyers? How do you determine
Yeah.
from a chart that it's going down?
Yeah, so a couple things that got my attention back there. Number one, it was the insanity of the rally, right? So I look back at history too. I'm a big history buff. I think history tends to rhyme, if not repeat, right, as they say. And so it was interesting that in 2017, when the Bitcoin chart topped, it was when they launched the CME futures on Bitcoin. And then interestingly enough, when in 2021, when Bitcoin was nearing that peak, it was when they launched the ETF for the futures on Bitcoin. So there were things that were kind of like, wait a minute, what's going on? And what accompanied with it was massive hype. And so you had this insanity where if you went on Twitter and said anything negative about Bitcoin, you were ripped to shreds. And one of the things that I know is that and this is human psychology, when everyone is in that kind of mega bull or bearish mode, you're usually close to the end. Then you take it into the charts and you could see a classic double top. And one of the things that really struck out to me, and this is one of the big things that I saw, was the amount of emotion that was in Bitcoin in terms of bullishness was so much more than in April of 2021 when we were at that same level. But Bitcoin was struggling to make new highs. And right away, to me, as a technician who's been around the block for years, it was telling me that likely then that means big money's selling. And when big money's selling, you have to take note.
But how did you know it would go down to 20,000? Actually went lower, but that's a pretty damn
Yeah.
good prediction.
Yeah, so it more had to do with just understanding bear markets, these kind of bubble collapses, and then looking past, if you look past at other cycles in commodities, if you look at other cycles in stocks, there's a tendency for the last major high to be the support level when you fall down. So that was right away what I grooved into, is that if we were going to see a dot-com type collapse, where going back to the dot-coms in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was a real wipeout. I mean, you had stocks down 90%, and we saw many altcoins down at that same amount. So it was kind of just looking at it and saying, okay, this is the likely, if we're going to collapse, this is likely where we'll find some support here.
But it's not like you were predicting FTX or
No.
all the other collapses. You weren't predicting that, but somehow they seem to happen in the same year that you're saying it's going to go down to $20,000.
Yeah,
But you weren't even factoring that in.
that's right. I wasn't factoring that in. There's no way I could know ahead of time that there was that going on. The only thing I would point out is that in these extreme bear markets, it's you tend to find the people that are not doing the correct things, because when everyone's running for the hills, they get exposed. They say when the tide goes out, you see who's wearing a bathing suit or not, right?
Right.
And it's the same kind of principle, is that Bernie Madoff, he was able to hide everything as long as the markets were going up. He could do his Ponzi scheme. But when the markets collapsed in 08, 09, there was no way to hide it. Same thing if you go back to Exxon, not Exxon, WorldCom and some of these other big collapses and shady things back in the early 2000s when the dot-com bubble collapsed, they were exposed. So there's going to be bad actors in any bull market, especially as unregulated as crypto is, but it's in the bear markets where they're discovered.
Okay, and so let's move to today. We've seen some upward pressure on Bitcoin. Is that going to continue? Are we going to see a rally? Is it going back to 60,000? Here's your chance to make a prediction. Or what are we seeing right now? What do you think?
Yeah, so based on this, right now we've had a beautiful bounce in Bitcoin. According to the charts, anyways, we don't yet have a bottom in cryptocurrency. I know that sounds crazy considering
It is what it is.
Yeah, but it is what it is, right? The charts are what I translate. I basically am like a language translator here, and I'm just reading the language of the charts. And the charts are still saying that we're not done with the bear market. This is a risk-on January rally. You had all the tax loss selling done in December. That really took a lot of sellers away for January. It allowed this big kind of reflex bounce. But I'm still seeing potential downside to 12 to 13,000, and a worst-case scenario down to about 9,000 before we finally bottom out this year. I just want everyone to understand, too, is I'm a huge long-term believer in Bitcoin too. So it's not like I'm one of
Yeah.
these crazy, minimalist, like this is going to go to zero. I actually think Bitcoin's 100K within a few years. It's just the bear market, you have to let it play out. Again, and I've been through enough of these with the dot-coms and the financial recession and all these things that I tend to kind of, recognize when these things are fully done. And it doesn't seem like we have those signals yet.
Yeah, and look, anyone listening to this, if all you hear are from cheerleaders all the time, and you know who we're talking about, these Bitcoin maximalists that are always like up, 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 they're the cheerleaders that have pom pom. That to me is a huge red flag. We all know it just doesn't go up. Stocks, any kind of asset or any kind of classes go up and down. That's just the nature of human psychology, and that's going to happen. So those people to me, I just ignore. It's people like you that come in and say, no. I like Bitcoin, but it's going down. That's what the charts are telling me, that that's what we believe are going to happen. So we
100%.
applaud that. We definitely applaud that. Now, you've been talking about Tesla.
Oh, I got some good stuff to show you today. So, number one, we have to look at this chart of Tesla. We know Tesla's getting some bad rap right now. It's collapsed all the way down. But check this out. There's this trend line right here. And what we can see here very clearly is that this trend line connects all the way back here to a key gap fill. So just walk over here with me. Take a look right there. Now, what's amazing about this is that this is where the S&P, it was added to the S&P. So this whole run up, the all-time highs, followed the addition to the S&P. The stock has now made a full round trip back to that technical level. To me, that's a technical signal to buy. So again, looking at this, I don't think it's a long-term buy yet. I think it's just a swing trade, but I would look for a technical bounce in this vicinity on Tesla.
So you're still involved with
Yes.
stock. It's not just crypto. You kind of have
Yes.
this mixed portfolio.
Yeah, correct. My bread and butter is still stocks and commodities because, in general, there's less because Bitcoin controls the movement of most bigger cryptos. It's really like if you like Bitcoin, then you like pretty much all the top 25 as well, and they're going to trade together. So it's really in the stock sphere where you're going to get these bigger moves in opposite directions. So, for instance, Tesla's had an awesome bounce recently, but to me, it's another signal that there's this kind of big run into risk assets. I don't think Tesla has bottomed yet. I still have it priced to go down to sub 100 before it fully bottoms out, maybe as low as like 85 to 65 as well. And the bottom line is this was the poster child for stocks in terms of risk on, right? If so many of the same investors that were in crypto were in Tesla, and it was kind of this cross section. So it makes sense that if we're going to see Tesla dump out, crypto will as well, and vice versa. They're going to be tied together.
Very interesting. Okay, I want to move to what Blackrock said just recently about the whole crypto market is going to go more towards these tokenized assets where crypto is backed by real world assets or debt instruments or anything of that we can actually value like a stock. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I do think there is a lot to be said for that, and I think again, it's the use case of a lot of these tokens. I think Bitcoin will continue to evolve into the digital gold, so eventually it won't be considered a risk asset. It's going to be a place for people to put money when things get scary out there, when the Fed prints money, etc. But I do think the other coins, if they're going to survive, are going to have some sort of asset that can be valued behind them. Now, Ethereum's kind of interesting, right? Because there's so many things built on the Ethereum network
Yeah.
that I believe that has an inherent value as well that people will be able to quantify. But a lot of the other coins, if they're going to survive, there has to be something behind them. I do agree.
Yeah, I'm of that mindset too. We've been pushing that for a while. We're all about security tokens or securitized tokens. I agree Bitcoin should evolve into digital gold just by the nature of what it is today. And Ethereum to me is like an operating system, maybe an open source operating system like Linux, where it comes free and then you just build on top of it. But Linux still makes money. So
That's
I
right.
still think
Yep,
that's
exactly.
I think your analysis is spot on that. And if you're watching this, I would even look to NFTs as you got to fight NFTs. The next generation, what I've seen, are tied to value. I just bought an NFT that's tied to real estate, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So
That's cool. Very
look,
cool.
yeah, look to these things happening in the future. Be very careful with the tokens outside the top 10, I would say. You trade in the top 25, but you're studying this day in and day out. But to the casual or the investor that's just doing this part-time because they have a real job. No offense.
No, it's for
I,
sure.
I would be very careful.
And I would
And
just point out too is that I trade the top 25, but in terms of holdings right now, the only things that I would be okay holding for a longer term would be Ethereum and Bitcoin, because I agree with you. There's too much uncertainty with regulation. What's the long case? Solana wasn't even on the map a few years ago, and now it's one of the
yeah,
bigger ones, right? And so you don't know what's going to supplant that. And so really, I think Ethereum and Bitcoin are the safe ones at this point.
totally agree. Okay, and with that, is there anything we didn't cover, Gareth, that we should cover based on what you're seeing out in the market today?
Yeah, I would just mention that from a psychological standpoint, this run into risk assets, we've seen Bed Bath Beyond running, we've seen GameStop, AMC, we've seen Tesla running, we've seen crypto running. That, if you look historically over the last year or so, has been more the signal of a top in the near term, not a bottom. We know that this occurred last year, obviously, with the top just before the markets collapsed and Bitcoin collapsed. And so people just need to. There's so much FOMO out there. You look on Twitter, everyone's like, "Oh, I'm going to buy my next Lambo with all the money I'm going to make." It's you. Be very careful getting sucked into that. The mental strategies for a good investor you need to be so strict on that side.
Couldn't agree more. Wow. I haven't met a guest that shared my opinion on most of these things, but
I
now I
love it.
have. Great talk. I'd love to have you on in the future.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Hey, folks. My name is Mark Fidelman. I am the host of Cryptonized, and I have a special tip for you today. It's Tetraguard. You can find it at tetraguard.io. This is the first decentralized ETF consists of Bitcoin, PaxG, and Ethereum. I recommend this. If you just want to get into crypto the easy way and have some solid crypto tokens that are in this particular ETF, then Tetraguard is the way to go. Check it out.